As you guys know, I pretty much never go by what the critics are saying. Yes, sometimes I'll agree with them, but it's not because I'm going along with them, but it's because in that instance, their opinions and mine align. But oftentimes, I disagree with critics. So, walking into X-Men Apocalypse, the ninth in the X-Men series, this time, instead of wondering whether I'd agree with the critics or not, I wondered which half of the critics I would agree with. Sitting at around 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, X-Men Apocalypse is the very definition of polarizing, with one half giving it favorable reviews and the other half giving it unfavorable reviews. Yes, I want to make that clear. 50% does not mean that it's a 5 out of 10. It means that half the critics rated it at least a 6 out of 10, and the other half did not. So, what did I think? Well, let me tell you in my usual roundabout way. Usually, when I go against the consensus, I can see the point or points that the other side has. When I like a movie like Ang Lee's Hulk, which by the way sits at a fresh 61%, I can see the point that the other 39% have. It was slow and methodical, it didn't have a lot of action, and it was cerebral for a film that they thought would not be. I think in 2003, people weren't ready for it. I don't agree with those who disliked it, but I can understand why they disliked it. Then there's the other side of the coin. Like Kick-Ass. Certified fresh at 76% right now, but I hated it. I can see what other people like. They like the colorful characters, the fast-paced action, they like the skewed stance on superhero films, and the subversion of the entire genre, while what I saw was a morally bankrupt piece of trash. I'll give you another example, this time within the X-Men series itself. By far, the worst film in the series is X-Men The Last Stand. A big Brett Ratner of a mess that disposed of characterization for just having a lot of characters, and soiled the series so badly that it took a reboot to recover from it. It has 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means more critics liked it than disliked it. X-Men Origins Wolverine is a movie that I liked. But I could see the flaws. I could understand how some people can't get past the flaws and disliked it, but I thought it was fun and engaging. It has 38%. The film that I liked, but I could understand how some people wouldn't, is 20 points lower than the one that I think is garbage. That being said, I can't understand how anyone wouldn't like X-Men Apocalypse. I'm not going to say that the film was perfect, but damn, is it good. The story takes place 10 years after Days of Future Past, and Mystique saving the President from Magneto has changed human and mutant relations for the better, though not completely and not in every part of the world. There aren't any more X-Men, as Xavier has decided that instead of training soldiers, to teach children how to cope and use their powers and integrate into society. One scene that I found interesting was when he said that he'd like to expand the school and invite humans as well to fully integrate everybody and grow parts of humanity together. I was somewhat reminded of Planet of the Apes, the original series, which only saw its conclusion when segregation fully ended and both men and apes were taught together so that neither would think that they were superior. This utopian vision is stymied by Apocalypse, the world's first mutant who hops from body to body, but in ancient Egypt was betrayed and entombed within a pyramid. He's been trapped ever since, but an apocalyptic cult breaks him out, and he sees the world as having lost its way. His view isn't different from Magneto's. He thinks the strong should rule, but there are a few differences. While Magneto took his supremacist views from being scorned by humans and generally fearing them, Apocalypse just believes that might makes right. While Magneto wanted to make humans subservient because he believed that was the only way the mutant race would survive, Apocalypse just wants humans wiped from the earth. He thinks they're not fit for it. They use weapons to play act at having power while he was born with it. It's almost like he feels insulted by weapons because it's some sort of bizarre appropriation of power. Now, speaking of Magneto, he's been on the run, but has found himself in Poland with a new wife and daughter who, of course, has a gift. While he accidentally exposes his identity and tragedy typically follows, he returns to the rage and pain that defined him before, only this time, instead of having Xavier in his ear soothing him, we have Apocalypse in his ear telling him that he's right to want to kill everybody. Apocalypse gathers those with power and is able to amplify a mutant's powers. He gathers Angel, Psylocke, Magneto, and Storm together as his horsemen, and when he finds out about Xavier, the world's most powerful psychic, he sees whose body that he wants next. Also along the ride is Mystique, who has been working undercover helping mutants out who are still facing oppression because she feels the X-Men are needed. There will always be threats, and they need to face them. She spends most of the time in a more human form because she's uncomfortable with being branded a hero after the events of the last movie. She doesn't see herself that way and is dismayed that anyone would look up to her because she sees the flaws in her own character. The new characters are mostly older ones being reintroduced into this alternate timeline. Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, and for the most part their roles are not that big. Angel and Psylocke exist mostly just to fight, but it's hinted that they'll see greater prominence in the future. Cyclops has the biggest role out of all the newbies, but it's Jean Grey that comes off as the biggest surprise, fixing a major issue with her character in the old timeline and restoring her importance in the franchise in a major way. If I could use one word to describe this film, it would be spectacle. Every bit of it is a spectacle, from the opening scene showing Apocalypse in ancient Egypt to the final battle where, minus one character, all the mutants come together to battle Apocalypse. The movie also makes a spectacle out of the series in general, containing a lot of callbacks, leaning heavily on the fourth wall in one scene to bash X-Men The Last Stand, or celebrating First Class and Days of Future Past, and of course, the post-credit scene that sets up the next one. Every shot is a trailer shot. Every fight scene is a highly stylized thing, and yeah, it works. If you think that they did the film a disservice in the last trailer by showing that Wolverine is in it, well, they showed that, but they didn't show you a much bigger surprise toward the end that to me redeems the series' worst entries in a way that Days of Future Past almost did, but didn't quite do. Yes, there's a lot of characters, so not all of them are going to be fleshed out, but focusing on a principal cast and giving them good character growth while introducing new characters that, while not fully fleshed out, are at least interesting, was a smart move. All in all, no, it's not as good as First Class, which had better direction and a better villain, but it's about on par with Days of Future Past. It's a great continuation and a great celebration of the series as a whole. I give it a 9 out of 10. So, if it's love it or hate it, put me firmly in the love it category. And a last word on critiques in general. Sometimes on movie reviews that I do, I get people who don't agree with me, and that's fine. But the comments that I get are kind of hilarious. Some people are like, "I'm sorry, but you're wrong." No, I'm not wrong, you just disagree with me, and why would you be sorry? Silly people. But the worst of all is, this is not a review, it's just your opinion. Well, that's what a review is. That's what all reviews are. You didn't come to this video for me to tell you to see the film. You probably already made that decision, and some of you have probably already seen it. You came to see what I thought of it. You came for my opinion. And you'll have your own opinion, and maybe some of you will disagree strongly with me, but instead of telling me in the comments, I encourage you to do your own reviews, give your own critiques, make a video, share it, because that's why I started this. Long before I did YouTube, I did movie reviews. I've done that longer than I've done anything else that I do online, and it was to share my thoughts. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. The only difference between a professional critic and an amateur critic is that the professional gets paid to do it. There was a time in human history when the word amateur was meant as a token of respect, for someone who does something not for a living, but out of a passion. So yes, I'd like to see more amateur critics. I'd like to see more people sharing their thoughts on films. Make it happen.